My number 6 is Relay. And
Ooh,
is that
okay.
also your number 6, or is it your number 5?
I got that at number 5.
Okay. Do we want to wait, or
we
we
can
want to
talk
just do
about
it
it now?
now?
Let's talk about it now.
Cool. Relay just feels like this classic return to like the 90s thriller, the early 2000s crime thriller.
Yeah.
It almost feels even dated to that era because like when they're doing the opening title screens, it's like digitalized, like like an alarm clock. And then the only thing that let me know immediately that we were in a modern era is that when they're like walking into an establishment, you saw the DoorDash sign and like wear masks to be considerate type thing. And I was like, okay, we're in the present day. But it has just this like very interesting, just the kind of the way they used to do the crime stuff in the 90s, where like there's the crime stuff that's all really interesting, but they're weaving in this romance side plot at the same time because, you know, they're pushing that too. But I love what this movie does with that as you're going through the movie, because there's moments where I was like, this feels kind of unbelievable, but not enough for me not to enjoy the ride. But then you get to where it's going and you're like, oh my God, that made perfect sense. So I think it's both fun, but then a very good look at this concept of like loneliness in an individual and how it can make you put your guard down in ways that you normally wouldn't. And all the things you've done to protect yourself. Because basically Riz Ahmed plays a guy who's made it his job to help people get out of whistleblower situations. So people who have taken information from their companies and then realized, oh shit, I don't want to do this. They know I have it. I just want to go back to my life. And they negotiate a transition of the information and then usually try to get the person set up in a way that they can disappear and everything's good.
Yeah.
So it's a very compelling story right from the get-go. And then you're just kind of watching this one particular mission play out.
Exactly. Like he's a corporate fixer. It's a little like Michael Clayton in that sense. Although like it's got a lot of, as you mentioned, the more like 90s, 2000s kind of crime thriller to it too. I do think the parts of it that reminded me of Michael Clayton, reminded me of Margin Call, that kind of like TikTok corporate crisis thing is what I really responded to it. Like the way that they sort of go through these sequence of messages back and forth, and what could be told in a really uninteresting way, they find ways to dramatize it and put in bits of humor, particularly with this sort of relay phone service that is integral to the plot of this movie. I think is just a really clever way of building in the tension and the suspense and the mystery of this film. And then it all sort of like kind of explodes in a sort of like tense shoot 'em up crime esque way that is a little bit Michael Mannish. I really enjoyed this one. I think that there's maybe elements of it that feel a little bit less thoroughly thought through than others, but like
of course
there's a couple bits that sequences that are edge of your seat stuff. It's really thrilling. There is a moment that I know Chase and I were talking about that we were completely caught off guard by.
Yeah.
I think it's really solid. And we talked earlier about The Order as like the type of like very solid cable thriller. Like this is one of the like top tier versions of that.
That's a fair way to put it. Yeah. That moment, and as I get more cynical, as I get older, I feel like movies less and less surprise me. And I think Relay it's like that. It's like the solid movie that you know is good. But then towards the end, you're like, oh, shit, this is what it's going for?
Yeah,
and
that thing that you're
really
like
when a movie does that successfully.
Yeah, like the thing you thought was a flaw was actually a feature. Like you're kind of watching it and you're like, yeah, this doesn't seem like outside the realms of what would be happening, even if it's not super realistic. And then you're like, oh my God, okay, it was a good setup. Good setup.
This was the most tired I was for a movie, and it woke me up, you know, and that's the best compliment I could give a movie like this. So
exactly.
It was one of those.
It went for that number 11 spot with 14 other movies on my list, but I definitely give it the thumbs up.